So you can't, as a creative, you can't really think, and our minds, our creative assets are like the biggest aspect of what we do. So if your brain's running on empty or it's distracted or overwhelmed, it doesn't produce the same creative output that you normally would have when you are feeling more energy and inspired. Welcome to the Creative Synergy Podcast, where wellness and creativity come together to help you get healthier and more productive. My name is Coach Sin, and I am going to guide you through your journey to whole body health. And in this episode today, we're going to be talking about low energy, how it affects your creativity, and the things you can do to increase your energy to stay creatively productive. Now, the reason I wanted to dive into this as the next topic for the show is because a while back I did a presentation for a local chapter here in Nevada called Startup Nevada. It's called Ignite Talks. It's basically presented by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs, and we speak on various issues. My talk, of course, was about creative wellness. But before I actually had my presentation, I put out a poll, and the results actually, they kind of piqued my interest a little bit because it was not what I was expecting as the results of it. I asked what would impede or what does impede my fellow entrepreneurs from actually creating. And in the poll, I had 3 responses. I had pain, I had low energy, and I had self-doubt. And the 2 that came out the most were the self-doubt and the low energy. Now, I was expecting it to be a pain influence. Perhaps a lot of these people are in different avenues of entrepreneurship, so maybe they're not feeling the effects, say, of a specific creative type, like a writer or designer who sits all day. But I wanted to take that poll to heart because that is why I make my content. I wanted to get out tips for busy creative professionals and entrepreneurs to help them be more productive. So when I saw the results of that poll, I wanted to dive in and answer those specific pain points with some ideas to help mitigate them and to keep people being, creative in their pursuits. But another reason I wanted to dive into the low energy specifically is because myself, I've been feeling completely under the weather lately. I caught a little something as of this recording. It's been about a week. I'm over the hump of it, but there's a long-lasting residual effect that has actually been sapping my energy, and it's been making it really difficult to focus on my new venture, which is the Creative Synergy Podcast, and the specific guides and courses that I've been wanting to create for you guys. So it's been really difficult to implement the things that I wanted to create. So I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to touch on the ways that not only am I coping with my low energy, but also the ways in which you can cope with your low energy and continue to be productive so that you don't fall behind, which is what was concerning to me in the first place, is I felt like I was falling behind. I almost didn't get this podcast out in time. In fact, I'm a day late and $1 short, as they say. But I wanted to make sure that I remained consistent so that you are getting the value that you expect when it's supposed to drop. So here we are, and let's dive into it. So what is the link, in fact, between creative output and energy? Well, that's sort of an obvious answer. If you're not feeling your best and you're feeling low energy, it's going to accumulate in different avenues because you're not putting out your best effort. And that's with anything that you're doing, because you're not putting out your best effort because you are depleted. So say, like I said, when I was sick, like very, very sick, all you can do is like lay around in your bed. You really can't. What I was likening it to is my brain felt like it was on fire, just because of the congestion and the draining effects of it. So you can't, as a creative, you can't really think, and our minds, our creative assets are like the biggest aspect of what we do. So if your brain's running on empty or it's distracted or overwhelmed, it doesn't produce the same creative output that you normally would have when you are feeling more energy and inspired. But there's a difference that relates between productivity, burnout essentially, and just temporary fatigue. So burnout is essentially going balls to the wall consistently, burning the candle at both ends. I've mentioned this before in another podcast. And you're actually physically depleting yourself down to the point where you would get yourself sick. Temporary fatigue is just an onset of perhaps that day you're feeling a lack of energy, you didn't sleep well, you didn't eat well, which is something that a lot of people do. That they're running on fumes because they're not fueling the body, which in turn the mind doesn't get fueled either because there's no resources to draw from. If you're just sucking down caffeine all day, that is not fueling your body or your mind. So how do we change that so that we aren't depleted and we are putting out our best work? And instead of, running into this trap in the first place, what are some of the ways that we can get ahead of it so that we don't feel low energy and we don't get our flow interrupted? So it's a combination of understanding energy and how it works with the creative output, and also exploring tips that you can take to mitigate or even completely step around becoming fatigued in the first place. And I want to dive into those tips right now. So there's some common traps that creatives face that actually will wind up draining your energy in the process. So the first one is overworking and ignoring your natural energy rhythms. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's like I said, as creative types, we tend to get overworked, mostly because we're doing so many different things. We might be working a 9 to 5, and then we have family stuff, obligations, and then at the back end of that, you're trying to write that book or open that jewelry shop or create that piece of woodworking. Whatever it is, it often becomes the last thing that we do for some unknown reason. Creative work sometimes is very, very difficult to have that become your actual vocation that you get paid for it. And I'm not sure what the correlation is, but it seems like any creative endeavor, in order to be making the type of money that you need to make in order to not have a 9 to 5 job, it's very, very difficult for some reason. It's almost as if creativity is frowned upon as a point of being, paid, what you are deserved of your talent until you pay your dues, as they say. And then a lot of the times it comes down to luck over talent. It's really got nothing to do with talent anymore. So it becomes harder and harder to make that vocation the thing that pays your bills. So now you have another thing that you're doing to pay the bills. And therein of itself, that is a drainer to begin with, because more often than not, especially for a creative mind, unless you are somehow able to use your talents in a creative aspect in a 9 to 5 role, more often than not, I've found the 9 to 5 jobs are not rewarding. So inevitably, your reward comes from making your own art. And that, again, will come at the end of the day. Or you're getting up early to do it because those are the only times that you can fit it in. So you're working constantly. And that is one of the ways that you start to feel drained and your energy starts to get really, really low. Another and newer problem that we face as creatives with our output and our energy stores is a digital drain. And that comes from scrolling on social media, watching, streaming services. ChatGPT is and the other ones, whatever the heck they're called now, they are a rabbit hole of nonsense. So we spend so much time in front of these screens and involved in like a downward digital spiral that it becomes not only a time suck, but an energy suck as well. You would be surprised. There's tons of research out there that shows the longer that you spend scrolling online and doom scrolling, as they call it, the more energy sapping it is. So you might be thinking, yeah, but I'm just laying around doing this with my thumb. Exactly. You're not getting any movement. And you're really, when it comes down to it, you're really not feeding your mind anything useful or energizing either. It's all, like I said, doom and gloom or just nonsense. And none of it really fills you up to the point where you actually feel creative unless you are specifically watching different creators that inspire you and they get you to want to take advantage of your day or, actually build something. There's a few out there that I follow. But more often than not, it's a lot of, and I really can't stand this. Creators, trainers, everyone out there, every title on the social media these days is, don't do this. Stop doing this. This doesn't work. Blah, 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 blah. So do you get what I'm saying there? It's all negative. It's very, very negative. Negative this, negative output. By the time you get through all of the don't do this, don't do that, what's left to do? Well, I'll tell you what's left to do. Turn the phone off. Get outside. Get some energy. Get some blood pumping through your veins. And stop looking at this nonsense that is really not conducive to what you're trying to create. So there's other habits that creatives fall into, and not just creatives, but most desk workers fall into these habits, and they are definitely energy drainers. And one of them, like I mentioned earlier in this podcast, is nutrition. But then that goes hand in hand with proper hydration and also proper sleep. So imagine if you're eating like crap, you're not drinking enough water. Instead, you're drinking a lot of caffeine because you think coffee and energy drinks are going to boost your energy up, but they're actually dehydrating you. And then you're not getting enough sleep. So all three of those things are now compounded. And what does that do? Well, it saps your energy down even further than it was before because you're not giving your body what it needs to perform optimally. And now this comes from years as a trainer and a wellness coach myself. I have come to learn in that aspect of my life, and I always say I've lived several different lives. One of them was as a personal trainer and an athlete. And what I came to learn is that the body will perform the way that it is supposed to if you give it what it needs. A lot of people, they get sick or they get aches and pains or so forth. And if you look at the diet and the way that they live their lives, it's not surprising because they're not getting any activity. They're not moving. There's no exercise. They just sit in front of the TV all day and then in front of the computer and back and forth. They eat horribly and they don't get enough rest because it's interrupted by, first of all, racing mind because you're full of anxiety at this point. Or you've got screens on as you sleep. And then, multiple other things that some of which can be health related that are waking you up in the middle of the night. So you're not getting the deep rest that you need to be getting. And I'm not here to shoot the blame back and forth. I'm not judging anyone. What I am saying is these are very specific traits that, if not taken care of, this is why you have no energy. But the good news is there's ways to fix them. So the strategies that we can use to overcome the low energy and the fatigue and we can get back into productivity come in two different methods. One is to focus on the physical body, and the other is the mind. And as I always say, the mind and body work together in synergy. That's why this is always about whole body health. So one of the ways that you can counteract some of the physical aspects of the low energy is to take mini breaks throughout your day. And this is especially relates to if you're sitting in front of a screen hours upon hours on end, take breaks often and early. When you step away from the screen and you get like a light movement, it doesn't have to be a massive workout, but if you take a walk or you just step away for a moment, it will really help you to get back to readjust. It'll readjust your focus. It will help you to break up the day so you are not feeling like you are stuck in one position for 8 to 10 hours a day. Because if you're only getting up and down to like go to the bathroom or what have you, it starts to feel routine in a way that's not conducive to productivity. So when you start keeping mini breaks going, that's going to amp up your energy, and it's going to jolt the body into not staying in this fixed pattern all day. Another thing you can do to optimize your creative output, I had mentioned before, either staying up late or getting up early to do your creative work. Well, what works best for you? We all have different schedules. We work best, when it suits us. So, but it's important to start to schedule your creative projects at the same time during the day, so that your mind and body is used to, jumping into that. It almost becomes like a switch in your mind that once it hits a certain time, your body and your mind are ready and they're roaring to go. And you'd be surprised that your creative flow, or your muse, as we call it in the creative world, is that dancing, getting ready to inspire you. Another thing you can do when you're starting to feel your energy dip throughout the day, or you can feel it coming on, start setting up little mini rituals or itemized tasks that you can do that once you start feeling the low energy, if you dive into these little tips and tasks that you set up for yourself, it can counteract that. So for instance, instead of reaching for a cup of coffee or an energy drink or something like that, you could do like a quick stretching session, or drink water, or whatever it is that will make you break up that pattern. Again, as I was talking about before, when you're sitting for hours on end, you want to break up the pattern so you're not starting to slump throughout the day. So that could be some type of music that gets you in the mood for whatever project you're working on, or just taking a minute to step away from the computer and just think deep thoughts, or to breathe, get some good deep breaths going. A lot of the times, and I haven't pointed this one out yet, when you're sitting and you start to get slumped, at your desk like that, it affects your breathing, and your breathing becomes more shallow. And then if you're not getting enough oxygen, the way that I'm not now because I am actually sick, when you're not getting enough oxygen, it starts to make the brain foggy. So you want to be able to get some really deep breaths going so that it circulates the blood flow and throughout the body, and that includes the brain. And speaking of the brain, part of restoring your energy when it's low and you want to get more energy into your creative projects is mindset shifts, because like I keep saying, the mind and body work together in unison and synergy. And if the mind is off, or if the body is off, the mind doesn't work. And if the mind is off, the body doesn't work. Like I said before, feeling sick, I couldn't produce. I couldn't work out either, because the body was drained, and then so was the mind at the same time. So what you can do is you can start really focusing on how the mind and the body work together. And this is in everyday, day-to-day activities. And this already, but it's worth repeating, because a lot of times we forget and we start to run off of fumes. And again, that's not conducive to what you're trying to do for your best work. If you're building an empire, you want everything to be working in unison to get the best output. But what you can do to get that output is to start changing your mindset of the overall huge picture of whatever it is you're trying to build. Say you're trying to build an entire business the way that I've been. Instead of focusing on the entire thing as a whole, you chunk it down into maybe, months, weeks, or even days. You can chunk it down to the hour, to the minute, to the second if you want. That's a little extreme. But what happens is when you take the larger piece of the puzzle, the overall puzzle, and you break it up into sections, then all of a sudden it's easier to focus. So you do one section at a time. And instead of saying, all of the things I have to do to get to this end result, well, now we're going to move. The end result's still there, but instead what we're doing is we're focusing on this piece of the puzzle first, and then we're going to move to the second section, and so on and so forth, until they all merge together, and now you have that masterpiece that you were looking at to begin with. But you do it in smart, segmented ways, and that way, when you accomplish those things that you set out for in those weeks or months, and you check those boxes, it's a really satisfying feeling, and you start to reward yourself for those small victories, and it builds momentum, and it helps you to keep going. And that in and of itself will keep your energy levels higher because you are moving forward. You feel like you are generating momentum, like I said, and things are actually working. Another big thing to remember for creatives, especially, is that rest is not the enemy. I know that when I am trying to build something, like I said, and I had to take time off from it, and I feel like I'm running out of time. I can actually almost see the hourglass with the sand coming out of it. But the thing is like you have to rest sometimes. You have to hit the brakes, because if not, you're going to run straight into a wall. And it's important to take that time off to almost reevaluate sometimes. It doesn't always have to be a physical draining. It's a mental draining, because maybe you're doing a lot of things towards the specific goal that you're trying to finish, and it's not working. So at that point, it's fine to take a minute and to reevaluate, the steps you've taken so far, and are they working? And if they are, what can you improve upon them? And if they aren't, what can you do differently? So it's okay to rest, but you're always going to get back up. It's not okay to quit until you've exhausted every avenue. And, it's not, as Les Brown always says, it's not over until you win. So take your breaks as you need them, as they come, to refresh and refocus and re-energize, but don't you dare quit. So that's going to be my show for today. I'm going to have more tips to boost your energy levels in the description, or you can always shoot me a DM. Let me know the things that you want to hear about, the tips and tricks to help you get healthier and more productive. That is the whole reason that this episode exists, is because I put that poll out, and what came back to me was low energy. So try some of these things out when next time you're feeling like your energy is dipping. Try some of these tactics out. Let me know how they work out for you. In the meantime, make sure that you subscribe, comment, like, share, all the things. Please let some other creatives in your life, or even, busy professionals of all walks of life, need to hear some of these things, because we work hard, and it's important to continue to take care of our whole body health at the same time. Otherwise, we're going to run into problems down the road, and the thing that we are trying to build won't get finished, because it's your vision. You were given the vision, nobody else was. So it's important that you finish it. But in order to finish it, you have to take the necessary steps to keep yourself energized, healthy, and creatively productive. And as your coach on this journey, I'm here to help you do just that. So make sure you tune in the next time. As always, if you need help starting out, I have 2 different books right now, the Healthy Habits Toolkit and Staying Fit As You Sit. Link will be in the description. But come on back for the next episode, and until then, live your dreams.